want to thank everyone for their participation today and the interest in the call. It is a rainy Tuesday afternoon here in D.C., but we're moving right along. At least it's not quite 87 as they said it was going to be. So once again, thank everybody for their interest in the call, and thank you again, as I always say every time we have a call, thanks for putting forward great topics that continue to be of interest to our membership and also make this call series a good success, a great success actually. For those of you who are new to the It's Your Call format, this is a conference call. There aren't any slides or anything. It is not a webinar. It is designed for an informal exchange among our members on various topics that are of interest to you. So please keep those topics coming. I ask that you please keep your phones on mute unless you're speaking, and also please refrain from using your hold button because, as you know, sometimes there is this background noise. Also, please hold all your questions and comments until the speaker has provided an overview of the topic that we have today. And I know today's topic is going to be of great interest to a lot of folks, everybody on this call, and probably the entire field, because it is on Prism, the benefits and challenges. And as many of you are either transitioning or considering what option, software option to choose as you transition from STD MIS, I know that you're very interested in what our discussant has to share about her benefits and the challenges that they have had. So today's lead is Heather Barto, and Heather is the Emergency Preparedness Surveillance Manager in New Hampshire. She has worked for the state of New Hampshire for 13 years, and 9 of those years has been as the HIV Surveillance Coordinator. This call is being recorded. Please mute your phones if you haven't already using *6. If you want to speak after Heather gives her overview, you can unmute or use *7 on your phone. Promptly following the call, you'll receive a brief survey. Please complete that survey. It's only about 5 or 6 questions. It takes just a couple of minutes to do. And I can't say enough. Please continue to send us the great topics. And now I'm going to turn it over to Heather.
Thank you, Dana. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We're lucky in New Hampshire. It's not raining here today. It's a little bit sunny out, but a little bit humid, so we're not quite at 87, maybe 75 degrees today.
Could you, well, that's good. It's not so hot, but could you just speak up a little tiny bit, Heather, please?
Sure. Is that better?
Yes, that's much better. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. So thank you for allowing us to have the opportunity to talk today. This is, I think, really helpful. New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services, our Division of Public Health Services, executed a contract with our vendor, Scientific Technologies Corporation, which is our vendor for our main infectious disease database called NEDS. And basically we use our vendor to install and implement Prism. And as we had indicated on the email that you sent out, Prism is an open source software available from the state of Florida. So our main goal of the Prism implementation was to be able to develop a single sign-on for all of our users to be able to log into one system and basically query all of our infectious disease data, which, you know, we're getting close to the end of the project here. We're going to be going live at the end of this month, and in fact, we were able to establish that goal to have all of our users log on to one system and query all New Hampshire's infectious disease data, so that's really great. So during this contract, which, you know, we've reached out a couple of our sister states to ask for their expertise and experience with Prism, but we had a number of challenges, and one of the challenges that we sort of faced was just the general lack of documentation for Prism, so we were sort of stumbling along for a little bit trying to just understand Prism and some of the functionality with it following a webinar that we received, and that was helpful. So through our contract, we're able to develop this, you know, single sign-on, and we also developed something called a comorbidity search. So basically, users can go in and select this button, comorbidity search, and it will generate a report back to show you if there's particular case has any infectious disease or any public health interventions received. So that, we believe, will help with treatment outcomes and planning for case management, et cetera. So that's really going to streamline a lot for our staff because essentially it's going to be one-stop shop. And I did a presentation in April for the Public Health Informatics Network Conference that talked about our integration efforts in New Hampshire and all the great things that we've done really over the past year by adding Prism in, and we also added a TB module in that will complement our investigations for STD as well. So we started our contract last fall, and we had some collaborations with Florida, and they helped us out with their vendor, ASD. I think it's Advanced Software Design. And Mary White, which probably several of you that are Prism states, helped us with a zip file, and we installed it, and et cetera. And the complexity of this project has really been around the data migration issues, primarily going from STDMIS to, a point-and-click interface has been very complex and very cumbersome, and it has required a lot of scripts and redesigning of scripts. And our vendor ended up using a subcontractor out of New Mexico, which does data migration projects all over the U.S. So that's worked out really well because that particular vendor has worked with other states to do data migration. So we're planning to go live, with Prism at the end of this month, and we've worked a lot with the state of Tennessee, so we'd like to thank them, and Arizona for helping answer some questions along the way. And we also submitted an EOR technical assistance request from CDC and was granted that, and so they're helping us design our mapper that we need for Rhapsody to implement electronic lab reporting. So all these resources have been very time intensive, very consuming, but in the end I think we're going to have a really great system that's just a lot easier for our users to sign onto one system and access all of our infectious disease data. We do all of our security and confidentiality training within one bureau, so we don't have any concerns over different programs accessing our data. And we're happy to share any of our resources. We've made a lot of documents along the way. We've made a lot of progress in a very short amount of time, but I think the purpose of this call was, one, to share our experience in sort of what we are sort of living right now, and then also, two, is to open it up for any feedback or thoughts, and then three, moving forward, is it helpful for a larger group such as NCSD or et cetera to come up with some kind of regular call schedule to exchange Prism ideas or agenda items, and maybe even have like a document repository. So that's the end of my very short blurb here, and I'll pass it back over to you, Dana, to see what the next part of this is when you open it up for questions.
Great. Well, thanks for that quick overview. It really gives us some good information. I think it's really great that you guys are using Prism for all your infectious disease, and I know that there are some jurisdictions who I think that is the goal but haven't quite gotten to that marker yet. So hopefully there will be some questions and discussion around that. So I'm opening up the lines for everyone. Hopefully I can unmute all. If you have
the conference has been unmuted.
If you have any questions or comments for Heather, or just discussions around Prism in general.
This is Heather, and I also have our a couple other experts on our team here, Terry, who's done the majority of the data migration piece, and Aaron, our HIV surveillance clearance. So all three of us, I think, could pretty much answer any questions about the project or data migration or anything that you might be considering if you're looking at Prism or other databases.
Heather, what did you speak to, any drawbacks that you had?
I think the biggest drawback for us has really been not understanding everything about Prism. We received a really good WebEx from the ASD company, and it was very helpful. So I think we had to make a lot of programmatic decisions, and as you all work with your budgets for your STD prevention grant, you have to make decisions, and so we made a decision with end of the year coming up and et cetera, and thought that we had everything pretty well thought out, but I'm not sure that we understand the complexities of Prism, because normally when you receive a database, you receive like test scripts and things like that you can follow for user acceptance testing, and we didn't have any of that. The scripts and how things worked, and we discovered some issues along the way with the database itself that were just not well documented. So Terry's done a really great job of documenting a lot of things that she's learned along the way, and she's kept track of all the errors that we've had, and just not well known. So when you're researching databases and you're trying to make an informed decision with limited budget, you want to feel like you know everything and anything about the database, and it was really hard to know everything, but we felt like we had a pretty good handle. And then I think the data migration piece with STMS is just so complex and so cumbersome that there's no way you could even really totally plan for that and how it might go, because you sort of have to make decisions on the fly.
Great. Thanks for that clarification. Jurisdictions that have made the transition or are still in the transition process that are on the line, have any comments?
This is Sandra from Maryland, and we're still in the process of moving from MIS to Prism, and I would agree that the migration piece has been really cumbersome and complicated, and I think complicated for us because we're also including our HIV partner services data in there, and that I'm not sure that all states are using it for that just yet.
We are using it for the same purpose too, and have found some complexities around that. Can I ask if you are working with ASD, or are you working with another vendor to
No, we're working with ASD.
Okay.
Hi, this is Hope, also from Maryland. On the same topic, I would love to hear more about how you guys are incorporating data elements from EHARS into Prism in New Hampshire.
That is an excellent question, and ASD built in a feature for HARS search, and so we have that fully functioning now. It uses a SAS program to extract data out in a CSV file, and the CSV file is imported on a regular basis into Prism. So just last week that was up and running for us.
So you're using the basic EHARS search functionality that's already in Prism, and it's working well for you?
Yes.
Great.
And so it selects, as you know, it selects some key variables out of there and allows the users to look at certain variables. For example, maybe when they were tested positive in the most recent labs and their risk factors and things like that. For us, with our STD prevention program manager, that was one of the top priorities to get that piece up and running. Our EHARS system just recently went virtual, so multiple users have access to the system. But again, we can't speak enough about the single sign-on. Users being able to log onto one system and search all of infectious disease data for New Hampshire has been already invaluable.
Thanks for that feedback, Marilyn. Other jurisdictions on the line that are transitioning?
This is Mary White with the state of Florida. I just wanted to ask New Hampshire about the morbidity, the comorbidity search that you were talking about. Does that search Prism as well as other systems that you have?
Yes, it does. Yep.
Okay, and what other kind of systems are you searching?
We're searching our general infectious disease database, NEDS, which is the New Hampshire Electronic Disease Surveillance System. And then it's also searching a TB module that's called TB PAM, and that was built by STC. And then eventually we're also adding an immunization registry on there, so we'll be able to get vaccine information.
And in a future release of Prism, we'll be incorporating more TB elements as well as hepatitis elements, so there'll be a little bit more integrated in there as well.
That's great. Thank you.
Who else has a comment?
Mary, this is Heather. Could I ask you a question?
Sure.
I was wondering what the total number of states that are using Prism, if you know off the top of your head.
Currently, I can tell you who's also converting. Alaska is converting. Arizona is live. Arkansas has been approved. Colorado's live. Indiana's live. Louisiana's live. You're New Hampshire. New Mexico is live. Tennessee is live, and Wyoming is live. We're in the process of converting Maryland, Alaska, and Arkansas.
That's really great.
Yeah. It's got a lot of potential. I know that the documentation is lacking. You know, we are trying to improve on that. There's a lot of issues with data conversion because, honestly, there's no way we can document it. Every single state does stuff a little bit different. Even if they all used STDMIS, they all used it slightly in a different way, and we have found that there's no easy way for us to document how to do it. You know, I have over probably about 70 scripts that I've written to do the conversion from STDMIS. It's very thorough, but there is a lot of problems. For example, Arkansas has run into a lot of issues with their data that they didn't even realize they had problems. You know, the scripts help identify those issues, but then those issues have to be corrected, and sometimes that does take a while.
So, Mary, if there were a couple of things that you could share with folks to help guide them along the path, and I hate to put you on the spot, but certainly you're in the know more than most, what would they be?
I guess, you know, the data's integrity is honestly the hardest part. With Arkansas, they had not run the utilities in STDMIS in years, okay? Run those utilities in STDMIS. They're there for a reason. That does cause a lot of problems with data conversion and data migration because it does keep up the integrity of the data. If you don't run those utilities, you end up with a mess. If you run them consistently, maybe once a month, maybe every 6 months, but at least if you just run them, you can find the problems before they become such a massive issue. So that's one thing I would definitely recommend. If you do plan on converting or would like to, you would need to keep those utilities up to date. You know, it is a challenge. It's not a simple task. I don't really know.
I think the tip that you just said about running the utilities to make sure you identify any data issues, I think that is huge, though. Thank you for sharing it. I think that definitely is very good to know.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where you wouldn't think it would matter a lot, but it does help with the integrity of the data, and that becomes very important when you try to convert from one system to another.
Absolutely.
You know, we are striving to make things better and make things more accessible through the application, so that there's less and less that you have to do behind the scenes. You know, it's just one of those things where it's just always in flux. We are constantly changing the application. For example, right now we're working on HIV linkage to care modules, and we're working on a lot of new features for the new congenital syphilis form. We are also going to be fairly near in the future be working on the new message mapping guide for submitting your data to CDC. So there are a lot of things coming into play coming up here soon.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Mary.
Dana?
Yes.
This is Terry Dawson in New Hampshire. I just wanted to add a little bit here for you. One thing that Mary mentioned is the scripts that are being written. Important to know that's not a one-size-fits-all. Every state is absolutely different, and you know what may work perfectly for Florida could end up being a disaster for New Hampshire. Some of the things, if you have ever gone in and done any sort of data cleaning, you have to understand that STDMIS applies a date and timestamp every time you save something in the system. So quite a few of the scripts use a date and timestamp as a date initiated or date closed, and that has been a big problem for us. We've had to rework a lot of the scripts. But if I could backtrack a little further, even on the HARS search, we don't actually have it in our testing system right now, but we were able to see it a few calls back with our vendor. When you're in a patient's profile, you can search for the HARS record, and when that comes up, you can also link that record. So what it does is it applies HARS ID number in the other ID field of the patient profile. And that's something that I believe will print off on the profile surveillance list. If I'm wrong, Mary, stop me.
You're correct.
One other thing we did as well, because I know, and I'm not sure if this is other states too, but I imagine it is, a lot of partners, are finding each other through technology, through like instant messaging, websites like Manhunt or Atom for Atom. So what we did in the other ID field of the patient profile is we've added a few different ID types like email address to make it searchable, instant message address, and website ID. What we have as well in STNIS, in the patient record under, I think it's local ID, we have risk, and we apply just a general risk to the patient record. We know event-specific risk would be associated with the interview, but we apply the general risk, MSM, hetero, bi, IDU, etc. We have brought that over to the other ID field as well as risk. So in doing that, we can search for a patient by gender, city, risk. We're going to do HIV status as well. Any email address is searchable through there, instant message ID, and Manhunt, or any other website domain screen name. Screen names are becoming very useful to us because sometimes with the hookups that happen, all you know is a screen name. You don't know a name, or they say they don't know the names. But the opportunity to really fine-tune a search in Prism is really just quite excellent.
That's great to know. That's good. Thank you. Thanks, Terry. Arizona, anyone from Arizona want to comment on your transition? Anything that you want to highlight for folks who are considering or in the midst of this now?
Well, this is Roxanne. I've got several people here who have worked on this, so I'm inviting them to chime in because I just kind of pulled the pieces together and let them do all the work. Definitely the issues with regard to the lack of documentation was huge. The fact that the system is structured as far as roles and access to different security pieces is set up, according to Florida's. So you have to take into consideration all of that, and as well as collaboration with your ITS and making sure everybody's on the same page at the same time and following up. I'm thinking that towards the end, when we really got things working and were entering data like mad, a lot having to do with that system stamp, state system stamp that that we rely on for reporting to CDC, that was a huge issue. So having enough staff to really tackle the problem towards the end when you're in a crush to get things done immediately is really important. And I think we have worked through a lot of issues. Mary's been very supportive and helpful, and she's given us a lot of information with regard to the back end so that we can maintain it. I was curious about the comorbidity search in New Hampshire as to how that operates and if it is something that's going to change the system so that you can't download any further revisions to the system. And, is the information being brought into your system, or is it just, how does that work? Anything else, Carrie? Carrie's the one that's been really operating this right now.
I think for anybody is just to make sure, if you're using a vendor to install it and do the data migration, and we had a lot of help from Florida, a tremendous amount of help. But I think a key thing is once you're out of that stage, you really need to have your IT department on board and trained and knowing how to do things on the back end and run the system when that help is not quite so near.
Thanks, Roxanne. Thanks, Carrie. Heather, did you want to respond to Roxanne's question about the comorbidity?
Sure. Yeah, and I just wanted to make a comment about what Carrie was saying, and I think that's very true about your IT department. Unfortunately for us, we have a lot of restrictions around it, and our IT department is overtaxed and et cetera, probably like everyone else's. So for us, it made more sense to go off-site to do some of the development work and database management and et cetera. So there's been some complications around implementing some kind of maintenance module like Tennessee uses to manage some of the things that we're already doing in STMIS. So we still have that challenge that we're working out with our vendor, but overall we feel very confident with our approach going forward of having them do some of the DBA work for us. For the comorbidity search, it's sort of like a pinging, and I could probably get you more technical terms than that. But it's not changing anything in the database. It doesn't change any of the data. It doesn't allow you not to export anything. It's just another button in the database, and it's just performing a search function within the system. And I'm happy to send you I have a PowerPoint that I use for the informatics conference in April, and if that's helpful, it actually has screenshots in there.
So does it work? This is Sandra from Maryland. Does that comorbidity search work similarly to the EHAR search, where you get like a CSV or something from the NEDS system and it searches that kind of thing, or is
it just all happens in the background? There's nothing extra that we have to do or our vendor has to do. It's already set up as like a programmed activity to happen in there. What it displays is it's a very short list, and it can actually take you to cases because it has linkable hyperlink in there to the case. So, for example, if I'm looking at Mickey Mouse has syphilis, maybe varicella, and HIV, once I select Mickey Mouse's information, it will display all of the cases, if there's any cases in there,
right,
of Mickey Mouse, and it will display the first name, the last name, the gender, their diagnosis, and maybe a couple more smaller fields, but it's definitely not like a full record. You can click on there, and it will take you to the full record. It's meant as like a quick search, but it can tell you. So you have to make a decision if they are diagnosed with syphilis, and we also know that they have Lyme disease, and there's something that might be co-reacting in there. That's very informative for our prevention staff as well as our public health nurses to be able to make decisions or treatments recommendations, or even testing recommendations.
Oh, that sounds great.
This is Mary. Do you realize that is unique to their state, because each state has their own, say, immunization system, their own TB system, their own other system that handles lead and all those other things. So, do you understand that code is going to be specific to each individual state? It's not going to be able to be, the screen could probably be changed so it could be used, but the code is going to be very unique to each individual state. So just understand that. I don't want you to think it's going to be something you could add. It is going to be unique to each state.
Right. This is Heather. I agree with what Mary's saying. She makes a very good point, and I don't want us to perceive that that's what we're displaying. We're just displaying our experience here in New Hampshire and what we're doing with our particular vendor. But it's been invaluable for us, even during training sessions when our staff are looking at potential uses, and it's really a whole way to think about investigation of cases of having access, essentially at your fingertips versus having to call another person to do a record search.
This is Carrie in Arizona. I just had a follow-up question. I believe it was Sandra in Maryland was indicating something about complexities with the HIV Partner Services piece, and if you could expound on that a little bit more.
Well, Hope is also on the Maryland call, so I'll also, feel free to chime in, Hope, if you have any comments. But I think it was just, we are also migrating the HIV Partner Services data that we have in our current MIS into Prism, and it just looked a little different than we were expecting, I think. And so that was something that we worked with Mary. She was very accommodating to us, and, working through those, it's the migration. It's funny things are going to happen, and you have to make decisions, and so that's what we did. And so I think it was just more we came up with more funny things in relation to the HIV Partner Services data than anything to do with STIs, I think.
Great, thanks.
Is that kind of fair, something to be said, Mary?
Yes. Your issue was here in Florida we only have one jurisdiction. You guys had two, so I had to make a lot of modifications to support the two jurisdictions. So I've since rewritten all the Partner Services Code to help support multiple jurisdictions. So there's, it's just, you've got to always remember Prism was designed for Florida, from head to toe, from beginning to end, it is designed for Florida. So anything else we do, we try to accommodate as we run across other states and interests that they might have. As we modify the code, we try to make it accommodating to those changes and differences. So again, from Partner Services, we only had one reporting entity where you guys had two. So that made it a lot more complicated for me to make modifications to the system to support the two different reporting jurisdictions. So again, it's just many different things, and always remember this code was designed around Florida, and it's just been offered for you guys to use, but it was designed around Florida's perspective.
And believe me, Mary, we thank you for you and the whole team and everyone before you for all the work that you've put in on this, and also the assistance that you've leveraged for everyone else. So we definitely appreciate that.
Mary deserves a big round of applause. She's
Yay, Mary!
Yay, Mary.
So other feedback from folks who have already gone live, anyone from Louisiana, New Mexico, or Wyoming on the call that want to provide some additional feedback or comments, because we know that Arkansas is, I guess, about to approach that, and if they have any questions as well, they can offer them up. But I would like to hear from those jurisdictions who have made the transition or are working themselves through the transition if you are on the line. So I take it potentially no one else is on the line. Just so you guys know, I'm not a wizard, but I am looking at the phone numbers. So that gives me an idea of who might be on the line, because I'm pretty good with area codes. But anyway, questions from anyone else? Any folks from Arkansas that may have a question for anyone that shared any information about Prism?
This is Brandy from Arkansas, and I don't really have a question about for our surveillance manager. I thought she was going to be on here, is the one who's pretty much kind of heading that up, and we've kind of been working on this transition since October. And as Mary mentioned, we had a few hiccups because our data was really, really bad, but I think we're moving along, and we should be, wrapping it up pretty soon.
Great, thanks, Brandy. No pressure there. I was joking. I mean, I can see, but I don't exactly know who's on the line. But thanks.
This is Heather. I just had a question for Arkansas. Are you planning to use the ELR piece of it?
Hi, Heather. Yes, this is Ari. We do plan to move to ELR eventually once we get our Prism and I guess all of the data migrated in Prism, and then currently working with getting EHARs up and running on ELR.
Happy to share any of our experiences with both of those too.
This is Kerry in Arizona again. I just wanted to make a comment and then ask kind of a general question. The comment is, I think we're really fond of Prism. It's working out really well for us. We found it's a really robust system, and we're able to get information out of the system and through various extracts that are run at the back end, as well as the canned reports that are in there. I think our biggest challenge has just been getting used to the database and learning more and more every day how it's working, and then trying to instruct our users out in the field. We have several counties that are also connected to the system currently, and we're planning to add more. So it's just getting used to the system. I think it's really great. It's been good for us so far, much better than our prior system. My general question is anyone out there using Prism for all of the HIV information? And is anyone using it strictly for partner services? And if they're using it for partner services, how is that interface with the evaluation web and getting that information transmitted to CDC?
Carrie, here in Florida, we've been doing partner services from Prism for approximately a while. We upload the files to Evaluation Web, and Maryland, I've also uploaded their files for them as well in the transitions that we've done. So it's really not difficult. We create an XML file and then that's submitted up to Evaluation Web. We also, Maryland has a little more grandiose plans, I believe, that one of their larger counties is going to also maybe be doing testing data from Prism. Right now, we'll be producing linkage to care data and partner services from Prism. But as far as the testing data, that's still in kind of development with Maryland.
Is anyone using for HIV surveillance in lieu, and EHARs in lieu?
We do use it for surveillance here in Florida. All our surveillance is done through Prism, but we still use it. We still get put into EHARs.
Okay. And so from the experience of other folks and what you were mentioning, the biggest challenge for like HIV partner services is the migration of data.
Well, I think that's the biggest challenge for all of it is the migration of data. And this is Sandra from Maryland, sorry. I think that's where the bulk of the time gets eaten up, and just making those decisions so that you can, understand what the data, your historical data is saying in Prism, But it's not that it's not, once it's in there, and it's wonderful and amazing.
Yeah, I think that migration initially was also really challenging for us. From a system, we didn't have MIS, we had a homemade system, and Mary did an outstanding job helping us with that conversion. It was great.
I think once we are in Prism, again, this is Sandra from Maryland, we're very excited to get to that point. We can't wait, actually. And I think once we are doing, the data entry into Prism, a lot of it's going to be wonderful and amazing, and I don't think we're going to have any kind of data quality issues that aren't, created by users, So I think it's just the migration is as everyone has said, it's tricky, and everyone is different, and it's not like a one-size-fits-all solution.
Hi, this is Adrienne from Florida, and I think from the perspective of an administrator, I think some conversations we may want to consider in the future are looking at ways that we can sort of support maintenance where we have commonalities, and I know, we're all doing sort of enhancements and modifications on our system, so there's some things that we won't be able to do together, but where there are opportunities, I think we should have discussions that way. Just kind of going back in listening to the feedback that I've gotten from other states as they're coming along. It gets quite challenging when you have such limited support in terms of who is Prism. And based off of everything that everybody is sort of attempting to do and where we want to go with it, I think we really need to consider a way that we can work together to at least alleviate some of the costs as we move forward. I think it's going to be great for everyone, and as you find out what your niche is and the uniqueness of your system, you'll find that there's going to be a lot of efficiencies that can be reached. But we still do kind of need to think about how can we, as Prism was originally intended to keep costs down, how can we maximize that?
I think that was a excellent suggestion, and one of the things that Heather had alluded to when she opened up her talk, because ideally we would like to have something set up, and whether that be through NCSD or something separate, but certainly NCSD is happy to do it, where we can have some kind of a mechanism, some type of venue for folks who want to have ongoing discussions related to Prism or whatever they're using, so that people aren't reinventing the wheel as they move forward. So I think that's a great suggestion for next steps. Comments, questions from others? So what do you all think about moving forward and things that you might want as a group? What do you think is the advantage or viability of any of that, or is there none?
This is Heather from New Hampshire, and I think exactly what you pointed out, Adrian pointed out, to have some kind of organized mechanism, whether it's a call or just some way to exchange data in a timely fashion, is helpful for us. And as I've said a couple times, we're happy to share anything that we've learned along the way, and others have pointed out that each state is going to be different, but having access to information, opinions and drawbacks and positives, etc., all that sort of stuff, being able to have it some kind of searchable way would be really helpful.
Thanks, Heather.
This is Roxanne in Arizona again. I think it would be great to have a forum where we could talk about our barriers and how we overcome them. If we can share different scripts that we're writing, and we use SAS here to solve problems. We are making the data available to the raw data available to our counties. So what we intend to do is just write script for them too, so that they can pull the data without having to go through the problems we've had to just learning the whole system. Any kind of issues like that would be really helpful to us as we address each of our problems.
Great. Thanks, Roxanne. And folks, please remember to mute your lines because we had to unmute for the discussion. Anyone else?
At one time, this is Mary again, I'm sorry, this is Mary. At one time we had discussed different, maybe trying to see if we could collaborate some way to get aid to the other states. For example, there's a major release that's going to be coming out soon in Prism. With that major release, if you want to upgrade to it, it is not going to be a simple upgrade. This is actually a major release, okay? So there's going to be a lot of new tables, data that have to be migrated. This is going to include the linkage to care piece for HIV linkage to care, as well as a lot of new pieces for working our help desk and stuff like that. So there's a lot of new features that are coming, but with that, you would have to upgrade. So, the more you guys change your code locally, the more difficult it will be to do those upgrades. So I do want to caution with that. The upgrades, I will tell you, I am not a person who's going to write something that you can just click a button and it'll do an upgrade for you, okay? I am not that great of a person that knows how to do that. So my upgrade is the best I can do is tell you what needs to be changed. I can give you scripts I ran for myself, which may not be accurate for your state, depending on your code changes. A lot of times when I have done upgrades in the past, I will ask for an extract of your system to look at your database structure as well as your code tables, and I can compare that with mine and tell you the differences. That does help sometimes too, but all of that does take time and effort. It is not Florida's responsibility to pay for that, so I just want you guys to be prepared that there is a major release coming. If you want any of those features, then you have to be prepared to do the upgrade with that. Sorry, guys.
Thanks, Mary. Any other questions, comments from anyone? For anyone that's on the call now? Okay, well, I'd like to thank Heather and the whole team there in New Hampshire, because I know you have some supporting members there. Thank you for giving us the overview, and thank everyone else for providing the great feedback and the discussion for today's call. Right after the call, as I said, you are going to get an evaluation. Please take a moment to fill that out. And shoot me an email, and let's think about how we can move forward to take care of some of your needs around communication. So I think that would be great for us to put in place, and we can look at how we can do that so it can be accessible for everyone who wants to join in on those discussions.
I did want to mention this is Mary again, I do have a Google group and a Google site out there that I do post things to anytime we make enhancements or changes. For example, New Hampshire found some typographical errors recently. I did post out there the code to correct those errors to any state who wants them. So I do currently communicate any updates, changes, anything that we find that needs to be modified through the Google group and the Google site.
Mary, can you make sure I get that information so that we can broadcast that far and wide?
Can you send me your email? I don't know that I have it.
Sure, I can, because I have yours.
Okay.
So I can send it to you so you can loop that back to me.
Sure, I can do that. But yes, I have a Google group and a Google site. The Google group site has a picture of each state's homepage, so you can see how unique each state has made the application on their own. I don't think I've gotten New Hampshire's screenshot yet. I'll have to ask them for that. But each state tries to give me kind of a snapshot of their homepage just so that we can kind of see each state. I also list on the Google site each state that is using Prism and each state that's in the middle of converting to Prism. And then on the Google group, we have discussions back and forth between different things, and we do post out there. Like the other day, New Hampshire found the typographical errors, so I did post the script to update those to anyone who wanted to make those changes.
Well, that's fabulous, because we're not going to reinvent the wheel if we have a group that's already up and moving along. So that would be great for us to link to.
Sure.
All right, so if there aren't any more questions or comments for Heather or anyone else on the call, we're going to end the call today. Thank you so much for your participation. Thank you, Heather.
Welcome.
And thanks for everybody being on the call. So we'll see you in 2 months for the next Extra call. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.